at the base of Mount Shasta in California, with an elevation of some 14,000 plus feet. For nearly 5 years now, cancer survivors have scaled its summits in an effort to raise funds to help prevention of cancer. But this mountain means far more to them than money and climbing. You see, it meant for them that they would continue on in life. And their motto was, against all odds. And the one-liner that they used to get themselves up to the top was, one step at a time. Today, we're going to travel up this road a little way and then begin to climb its heights also. And we're going to take with us tour guides too. Not the same tour guides that travel up the mountain every year, but they have traveled their own personal mountain, the mountain of cancer. So put on your hats, your backpacks, and let's go. When producer Ken Curtis came to me and asked if I'd like to be involved in a series of cancer stories, I was thrilled. But I have to tell you, I did have a hesitation. I thought to myself, where are we going to find people that have suffered cancer and want to talk about it? So I thought, well, I'll run a small ad in the local newspaper. So I went in and asked if they'd do a feature article for me. Well, kindly they consented. But it was a very small article placed in the back pages of the lifestyle section. That article ran for 1 day, and my phone ran for 10. I have to tell you, I thought to myself, are there really that many people out here that have suffered with cancer? My answer was simple. Yes, there is. I had to ask some very pertinent questions to several people, and this was the list that I asked. The first question was, what type of cancer do you have? The second question was, what kind of treatment did you undergo? The third question, what kind of personal emotions did you have to go through? The fourth question, what were your family and friends' reaction to your cancer? The fifth question, do you have any helpful hints? The sixth question, how has it changed your life? And the last one, number 7, what would you say to someone who had just been diagnosed with cancer? And so as we hike up the mountain today, I hope that some of your personal questions get answered as you see the interviews. Let's go. Well, one thing I'm learning on this climb is it looks a lot easier than it actually is. It doesn't look very far, but when you start climbing, it's a long way. Let's look at our first point. What kind of cancer do you have? But before we look for answers, let's face it, nobody thinks that the fight against cancer is going to be quick or easy. But it is possible, especially if you have cancer tour guides, people that have been there before you to help you along the way. Let's meet ours now. Mickey and Terry Ash, Frank Viverito, Donald and Judy Smith, and Jim Johnson. Now let's go back to our first question. What kind of cancer do you have?
In 2002, I was having a little problem. So my gynecologist checked everything out and she said, well, I don't see anything to worry about, but you do qualify to get a hysterectomy. And I said, good, because I don't want to go through this bleeding anymore. So we did that, and she came out from surgery and told my husband, oh, everything looks good, there's nothing to worry about. It went very, very well. 2 days later, she heard from the pathologist that my uterine was full of cancer. had they known ahead of time, she would have checked lymph nodes. So that meant I had to heal 2 months, and then I had to go through another surgery so they could do lymphdectomies. And after that, I started going through my radiation treatments. But so it was kind of a long, drawn-out affair in the beginning.
So how old were you at this point?
6 years ago, I would have been 63.
Okay, so 63. No idea that you have cancer
I'm very
of any
healthy.
kind?
No idea. No symptoms to do with cancer, no. Well, except a little bit of bleeding, which did happen. And nobody thought that's what it was, though.
So you didn't suspect anything at all?
No, didn't suspect
And the
it at
surgeon that did the first surgery didn't catch on either. She thought everything was great.
And
until
actually,
a pathology report came back.
yeah, and actually the second surgery was very similar. I was fortunate enough to be sent to UC Davis, and the head of the gynecology department was the one who did my surgery for the lymph nodes. And just by looking, you know, they don't know till they do send things to the pathologist, but he came out after the surgery and told Terry, "Oh, everything looks wonderful," said I'm sure it's not going to have spread to her lymph nodes. He's supposed to be in a hurry to get out of town. 2 days late, a day and a half later, he comes into my hospital room and says, "Oh, Mickey, I'm so sorry, but it turns out it had spread to your lymph nodes, and it's gone up into the aortal lymph node," which I guess is pretty serious.
My name is Frank Viverito. I'm 75 years old. I have had lung cancer 3 times in the last 4.5 years, and I've been blessed with remission all 3 times. Praise the Lord.
So can you tell me a little bit about the symptoms when it all first began?
4.5 years ago, I thought I had a chest cold, went to my general practitioner, who also happens to be an oncologist, and the chest cold turned out to be, in his opinion, bronchitis, which he treated me for. And when the bronchitis started showing blood in my sputum, he got concerned enough to order a CAT scan and a PET scan. The CAT scan showed a tumor. The PET scan lit it up and told him that it was more than likely cancerous tumor. And although the PET scan is the second best way of determining cancer, the primary or gold standard is needle biopsy. He wanted me to go to the hospital and get the needle biopsy performed, and I chose to go to the hospital in Sacramento, UC Davis Hospital, had the biopsy done, the needle biopsy, and it in fact turned out to be cancer. Unfortunately, the answer was, to be 100% sure to get the cancer out, we would have to do an operation to remove part of your lung, part of my lung. So since the cancer was in the lower lobe, and the tumor was the size of 2.5 centimeters, or roughly the size of a lady's small fingernail, they removed the lower lobe on the left side, along with the tumor, arthroscopically through a small incision in my rib cage, along with about 3 inches of a rib to give them some working room. We thought that was the end of the cancer, except that during the operation they saw involvement, was their terminology, in a couple of the lymph nodes near where the tumor was, and it's standard practice for them to analyze any lymph nodes close by a tumor. Because of that, I wasn't finished. I wound up with chemotherapy, and I believe I had 16 chemo sessions, 1 per week, following the surgery, in order to consider myself in remission and to be proven by a blank or negative type of a PET scan where nothing lit up in my area of concern.
And so she's right there, so she rushed me over to the hospital.
That's when it all began.
And it all began, and
So did they do surgery for the appendix? Obviously.
well, it took them
They
2
were,
days.
It took them 2 days. They could not decide why he was so bloated, what was really going on, and we didn't know at that time that they were running lots of tests and trying to decide. Well, they didn't talk to him. So within, 10 hours they had you in a hospital room? was on the second or third floor, something like that. And they let him sit there for 24 hours and didn't tell him anything. Well, I had left that day because I was still working, and I came back, and I was mad. I went out, I called my girlfriend who had nursing experience through friends, and she says, go talk to the head nurse. So I did. I went and talked to the head nurse, and I told him, I said, my husband's been laying here for 24 hours. You have not told him a thing. I want a doctor, I want a diagnosis, and I want it now. Well, within a couple of minutes, there were doctors and nurses and everything in there. They finally got, but we didn't know that they had been working on it all along, trying to figure out what was going on. Well, first of all, the surgeon came in. That was the first thing that made me feel good, because I knew he had to have some sort of surgery.
Obviously.
And then talked to him about what they were going to do, and that he didn't really know what was going on, but that he was going to go in orthoscopically and take a look around before he went in surgically. And when he went in orthoscopically, that's when he found the appendix had burst and all of the ick that was around and everything.
So they go in and they find that this is the problem, and then they do surgery for the rest of it to remove the rest of the appendix?
Right, and
Right.
all of the liquid and
Yeah.
all of the junk that was in there.
The reason I was getting tired for that year, my appendix had started to have problems leaking. And it kept building fatty tissue around it. Kept building fatty tissue. Well, when they operated, they took out a 20-pound mass out
20
of my
pounds?
stomach. And it, you know,
That's
Now that
that's
inc-
one
that-
fifth of me.
that included some intestines and stuff that had
Yeah.
grown fast to it and that they had to take out, you know.
Right.
And they did a major job in there. But,
So they're in there taking care of that, and that's when they find the
and,
cancer.
yeah,
Well, not really.
they scraped
The stomach.
They scraped the lining of the stomach wall, you know, and cavity.
Because Dr.
and-
Mazzarella didn't like the way it looked.
And he didn't think it was cancer, but
He told me it wasn't cancer.
he said, I don't think it's cancer, but when they sent it off and had it analyzed, it came back
was.
as cancer.
And what kind of cancer?
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma,
Large cell B cell.
large cell
B cell.
B cell, and it's associated. It's one of the factors associated with Agent Orange.
So you were in
Along with-
Vietnam.
I was in Vietnam, and as a result of the cancer, I've now been determined to be 100% disabled through the Veterans Administration because of Agent Orange exposure in Vietnam.
Now maybe you could tell us a little bit about your particular type of cancer.
I was diagnosed with colorectal cancer almost a year and a half ago. It was May 19th, 2007.
What were the symptoms?
It was odd. I had not been feeling well for maybe up to 6 or 8 months prior to that. And that particular day, I remember it was a Saturday, and I woke up just feeling sick all over. Did not feel good at all. Ached. Couldn't get out of bed. Finally, that afternoon, I went to the emergency room where they did a physical, etc., and did a CT scan. And that's when they found a tumor on my liver. And then they determined that that was not the primary tumor. The primary tumor was rectal, and it had metastasized to my liver. So,
I'm 70, and I had bladder cancer. I was out with a hunting group, and we were putting camp together, and as men will do in the woods, I was out using the restroom, so to speak, nice pine tree, and there was blood in my urine. I looked down, and my hunting buddy is a veterinarian. So I think, Bill, come here, take a look at this. He said, "Do you feel anything?" I don't feel a thing. I mean, just
Was there much blood?
a fair amount. It was red,
Right.
not maybe brilliant red, but certainly not yellow or neutral. Anyway, long story short, got home. I was a little frightened. I didn't tell Mickey at first. I called our family doctor, and he referred me to another specialist. And then I did tell Mickey that night. And he put me in the hospital, and he did surgery on my bladder. Now, the good news about my particular cancer bladder cancer. It was malignant, but it was not an aggressive cancer. The bladder is easy to get to relatively, and it's easy to work on, and it's very flexible. It's like a balloon, so to speak. So really, when I came out of all that, besides the discomfort from the surgery and stuff, I just felt pretty good. It didn't hit me like I was about 51. It didn't hit me as bad as Mickey's did.
No
Because
chemo?
it wasn't as superb. No, I didn't have any chemo or no radiation. They were able to go in and they do it through a scope, and they cauterize, as I understand it. They actually cut it out and then cauterize the bladder itself. So there's really no feeling, I mean, one way or the other. So that, I was lucky. We often have laughed that if you had to have one, that's a good one to have.
Right.
I mean, kind of silly, but you have
Yeah.
to take it with that in stride.
Well, I don't think that anybody would say that it was easy, but it does have a certain sense of adventure to it and accomplishment. Let's ask our tour guides the second question now. What kind of treatment did you receive? So today you're going to be having chemo,
Correct.
and you have their report. How does that work for you?
What they'll do, they'll come in with a machine, a pump, actually, and they hang the solutions on the pump, and then it goes through this tube directly into a vein in my body.
How long does that procedure take?
This procedure today will take about 4 to 5 hours.
So you're here for 4 to 5 hours.
Correct.
That's a long time. Wow.
That happens every other week in my case.
Is that the same treatment that you had the first time?
It's very similar to the one the first time, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That must be tiring.
Very tiring.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the end of the day, they will hook another pump to this that I will take home with me that pumps for another 46 hours continuously.
Wow.
So
That's a lot of drugs in your system. What are some of the side effects?
major side effects that I notice, I feel, are just fatigue. Then with some of the other drugs, I get basically 3 drugs over the course of the next few days, plus an injection. And one of the worst side effects there is some nausea, and then a lot of bone and joint aches, mainly in my hips and my legs. It affects me there. It affects everybody a little bit different, but in my case, it's my hips and my legs. They hurt quite bad at times. It'll wake me up at night and everything. So.
While Jim continues to undergo a fairly standard form of chemotherapy treatment, Frank just finished his series of treatments with the new cancer breakthrough, the cyberknife.
Yes, I had a new tumor in the left side lower portion of my lung, and that really surprised me because I thought with the amount of radiation that was there and cutting and all that good stuff that they did to get rid of that cancerous area, I'd never have problems there again, maybe somewhere else, but not there. But I was wrong. There was a new tumor there. And to make this story a little shorter, they decided that after a PET scan and a needle biopsy that it in fact was cancerous. And this one was tucked right behind one of my ribs, so it presented quite a challenge. The doctors in Santa Barbara, where I was discovered to have this cancer again, sent me to see the surgeon, thoracic surgeon, and he looked at the situation and he said, technically we could operate and get that out of there, but it would be risky and difficult because you've already had radiation and you've had lesions in that area and scar tissue, and because of those factors it would be technically capable of being performed, but it would be a very difficult, risky situation, which we really would rather not do. The better way would be to take out that lung in its entirety. And that might have sounded better to him, but it didn't sound better to me. So I said I had to think about it. But if that was the only way, I was going to have it done. We came home, thought about it a couple days, and one of Nancy's friends that walks the dog past here had a sister in San Diego with cancer. My wife and this lady were speaking one day out there and visiting, and the lady said, "How's your husband doing?" And my wife told her the situation, and the lady told us about her sister in San Diego's cancer, and that she had been treated with a cyberknife machine, which we had never heard of up until that moment. Our doctors in Santa Barbara hadn't said anything about it, neither had the one here in Oroville. So we inquired. It's a radiation technique that is targeted super accurate. It is targeted so accurately it only covers the target zone, the tumor itself, and only overlaps it a half of a millimeter on any side at any one time.
No pain?
No pain, no strain. You don't even know it's happening, except you hear the machine or can see the machine when it comes past you and locks into a particular position, doing its thing.
Mm-hmm. So that was 3 months ago. What's happening now?
Last week, I went to Santa Barbara for a PET scan and CAT scan to determine if the machine had done its job and put that cancer, number 3, into remission. And I'm very happy to tell you that it did put it into remission. The CAT scan showed no cancer anywhere, and I had a full body scan from my toes to the top of my scalp, PET and CAT and barium cocktail, which took care of all your gastrointestinal tract and showed no cancer whatsoever. Praise the Lord.
Wow. There's an old saying that says, you have nothing to fear for the future, except you forget where you've been led in the past. So I thought I'd take this moment to stop, have a little refreshment, and look back at just how far we really have come. That brings us to question number 3. What kind of personal emotions have you had to go through on your climb with cancer?
It's not like I could have done anything to prevent it. I think when I say anger that this happens to me, anybody would feel like, why did this happen to me? Why me? You know, I've not smoked heavily. I've not been a drunkard. I've not done all the carcinogen things, all the different things that you feel like you've taken pretty good care and lived a healthy life. You feel angry that something like this would hit you. The sadness, of course, is you feel, I'm probably going to die, you know, and most people are very afraid of dying. Let's face it, most people are.
Did you ever think that you were actually going to have to face death? I mean, did that reality ever cross your mind?
Of course, mine did.
I didn't. No. I've been indestructible since I was born.
He's also easily into denial.
Right. And I was, in fact, when Mickey's diagnosis came and she was going through the surgeries, I got depressed. I mean, not hugely, but I was depressed, and I had a lot of anxiety, and started taking some medication that the doctor prescribed for that, which was helpful to help me keep my balance.
So obviously, if you're getting depressed, while you don't think that you would die, you are facing the thoughts that perhaps your wife is going to.
That's correct. My partner.
Right. So you're indestructible as long as nothing touches your wife.
In a sense, that's well put.
We had just found out, Judy had just found out. I knew the night before and I didn't call her until she came in the next morning, and then we had just found out, she had just found out that I had cancer. We're sitting on the bed sobbing, you know, going through the emotional stuff. And this little girl came in and said, oh, what's wrong? And we're telling her what's going on. And said, oh, I'm sorry, you know. And then she went about cleaning the room. She went away, and about 5 minutes later, she came skipping into the room and says, oh, I brought you a present. It was a roll of toilet paper. But, you know, that was
He was so
exactly what we both needed at that moment in time.
So I bet that made you burst out laughing, did it?
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's what we needed. It just helped get us get through that period of time.
I didn't get angry. I just, it was kind of the, you know, of course, the why me situation. And then after that, I pretty much kind of just settled down and as I said, fortunately, I have a lot of good people around me that helped me out a lot. I still get, emotionally, I have a lot of down days that you just, you don't want to get out of bed, you don't want to do anything, and you know, emotionally.
How do you kick yourself in?
I don't. My wife usually calls me or gets me going. She kicks me and gets me going. Yeah.
Wives are good at that even when you're not sick.
Right. And, but it's difficult, and that'll happen a few days at a time, and then I'll be fine for a few days. And it's just it's a tremendous roller coaster ride for me.
How did you feel about this? What were your reactions?
Well, when I first heard that I had lung cancer, I couldn't believe it because I'm a non-smoker. I've never smoked. And when I expressed that to my doctor, he said, well, unfortunately, Frank, 80% of the people that get lung cancer are smokers and 20% are not smokers, and you happen to fall into the 20% bracket. But there had been cancer in my family. My mother and my sister both died of pancreatic cancer. And if that doctor would have told me I had pancreatic cancer, it wouldn't have surprised me as much as lung cancer. Being a non-smoker, I thought I would never have lung cancer. But secondhand smoke can give you cancer also, and I've worked around many people that were smokers. And my father was a smoker. So I'm going to assume, since we can't prove it, that it was secondhand smoke that did it. However, there is cancer in my family, and maybe my genes had that propensity. Doctor told me once, we all have cancer sooner or later in our bodies, and usually if our immune systems are working properly, the immune system will quell the cancer's advantage, and you will be cancer symptom free. But since we all seem to have these cells at times, it's important to keep your immune system up. How did I feel? I'll tell you how I felt. I felt I was lucky to be the one that had the cancer and not one of my loved ones. I would not wish it on any of my loved ones, and I'm strong enough to feel that whatever comes my way, I'll handle it. And I get great relief from reading James 1:12. James 1:12 tells you the person that perseveres will get God's attention, and you'll wind up with the crown of life. And I have persevered, and I feel I've wound up with the crown of life. That's my general philosophy on a lot of things that are stressful. I'm not a giver-upper. When they come to bury me, they better bring a lot of people, because I'm going to be throwing the dirt right back in their faces.
Question number 4 along the way. What were the reaction of family and friends when they found out that you had cancer? How did your family react to both of your situations?
Well, when he got his, the kids were still in high school or junior.
Yeah, it's just...
They were a lot younger, and they just, kids that age are not really aware a lot of what's going on. And we might not have shared with them, to be honest. We might not have gone into detail. But afterwards, or mine, my daughter, it hit her pretty hard. She's 42 now. So 6 years ago, she was 36, and she had 2 little girls, and we've always been very, very close. And I know she had several times when she broke down.
How'd that affect you?
That affects me. So I think I worried more about how it affected everybody else than how it affected me. I worried for them, because wanted to be there for them, you know, and I didn't want them to feel bad or think they were going to lose me or be missing me so bad.
And then they tried some experimental stuff, and one was anti-cancer agents 1 month, and the other one was a month of steroids. Well, when I was on the steroids, I couldn't sleep more than 2 hours in 24. When I was on the anti-cancer agents, I couldn't stay awake, except maybe 2 hours a day. I slept most of the time. I'd go to work and sleep.
Where were you working?
I worked at the state printing plant in Sacramento at that time. We lived in Auburn at that time.
How did you live with this situation, with him sleeping and not sleeping?
I ignored it.
You ignored it?
No, I did. At that point in my life, I was so busy working 2 jobs and I had a son at home that I pretty much ignored it.
Right.
And he wasn't upfront with me about it either.
So you really didn't know how serious things were? Why weren't you up front with your wife?
I don't know.
Because that was his culture. Back in northeastern Pennsylvania, you just don't talk. You know, you just don't talk about things.
So you just kind of grit it out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you were saying that's changed a little bit since then.
Oh, that has changed significantly. I mean, my emotions flow forth in tears and happiness, and I talk a little bit more to her.
A lot.
Can't get me to shut up sometimes.
It's really great because we have everything talked out. You know, I mean, everything's set for when he dies, or if I die first. I could virtually die first. But I just had a girlfriend who lost a dear friend, and he would not talk to his wife. She has no clue what to do. And that's, to me, that's really sad.
Now, how were you dealing with this emotionally? Did you think that maybe he was going to die?
I really wasn't sure at the time. All I knew is that he was going down, he wasn't eating. He's getting skinnier as we go. We had to tie him in bed because he was violent. He's getting all this damned hospital, you know, and on and on and on. And finally, this Sunday night, Dr. Mosh came in and said, we either had to start chemo or he would die. So we started it.
And then he said, but if we started, it may kill him.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know.
boy. What about your wife? What was her reaction when you first found out, and your other family and friends, when they first found out that you had cancer?
My wife was extremely upset. She did not take the news very well at all. And it's been almost a year and a half, and she still has, from time to time, has problems dealing with it. My family, I know, was very shocked also. There again, I'd been such a healthy person, and not a health nut, but I always tried to take care of myself somewhat and be very active, and I was very physically active before this. But yeah, it was very difficult for my sisters, my brother, and I think my younger brother, for some reason, took it really hard, and so did my mother. I don't know why. It just seemed to bother them a lot more.
Were they worried about you? I mean, did they think that this might be the end?
Oh yes, at first, because I was what they call stage 3 when I was diagnosed.
How many stages are there?
There's only 4 stages.
Right.
And I asked my oncologist when I first started treatment, I asked him if I did not do any treatment, how long I had. He said I would have lived maybe 4 to 6 months is what I had at that time. But fortunately, I responded to the chemotherapy and the radiation very well.
So that was a year and a half ago?
Correct.
So your wife had to face the concept that she might be losing her husband.
Correct. Instead of putting up a Christmas tree, she would have been making arrangements, probably, funeral arrangements.
How did that affect you to have to watch her on this roller coaster ride as well as you being on your own? And that had to be tough.
It was very difficult, but I honestly, I really feel that it helped me because I had to help her.
Okay.
And it helped me get over a lot of the emotions, get through some very difficult times because somebody had to be there for her as well as she was there for me. So I guess we were leaning on each other, taking care of each other.
That's beautiful. Your wife, how did she respond to this?
Well, my wife's had her share of trauma also, and she's a trooper, and she's always been my main squeeze, my main support. We've been married 55 years, day after tomorrow, and she was naturally devastated to hear this news. However, she knew that falling apart wasn't going to make me live a day longer, and that I was going to need some support, both morally and physically, to get back and forth to the doctors and things like that. So she never whimpered and wavered, and I told her, I don't want to see you crying until you see me crying. Then it's okay for you to cry. But I promised her that I wouldn't put my burden on anybody else. It's my cross to bear, and I can do it, and I have done it.
What about your children?
I've got a 46-year-old and a 42-year-old. She's 42, I believe. And both of them were naturally upset that Dad, the pillar of strength that they always thought was immortal. My son thinks I'm Lance Armstrong of the lung cancer. He said, Dad, I know you can handle this, and whatever it takes, wherever you've got to go to the doctor, don't worry about getting there, don't worry about Mom, because he knows that she's my primary concern. She's the only job I have left after I retired, and I tell her, as long as you're happy and healthy, I'm happy and healthy. So they assured me that Mom would be taken care of no matter what happened, and it's a great comfort to me.
Well, as you'd expect, the climb gets a little tougher as we near the top. But remember, no matter how difficult, we're still ascending. And so now's a good time for question 5. Do you have any helpful hints?
Right. I feel like it's smart to learn all you can about your cancer, whatever it might be. Go on the internet or check out books from the library. Find out all you can, and then write down your questions and take that list with you to the doctor, because you won't remember what all it was you wanted to ask. We also have a firm belief that you should take a loved one or a friend with you to the doctor, because as you're asking questions and the doctor's talking to you, you kind of just go off, you know, and your mind is a blank at times, and so you need someone with you to take notes. And then when you leave, now, what did he say? When am I starting? And how long will it take? You know, things like that.
And so the two of you did that together?
We did.
Yes.
Yes.
And
we make it a point to do that, whatever the reason.
I'm kind of chuckling a little bit, because even when both of us hear the same thing and we're in good shape and sober, we don't always get it right. You know, we don't always hear it correctly.
Yeah.
We both hear, you know, the same person is talking to both of us, and we think, oh, we got it, and we get home and compare notes, and we're going, well, so we call them back. Not often, but that was I think, you know, Mickey's advice is great. I think taking somebody with you is an absolute must.
And the other thing that I suggested, or would suggest to a cancer person who's just been diagnosed, is first of all, think positively. You're going to feel anger and you're going to feel sadness, and that's natural. Of course you are. But don't let those be the dominating forces in your life. Remember that you need positive energy to fight the battle, and positive thoughts are what bring about positive energy. We're pretty vegetarian.
Well, we gave up all the garbage food.
So, no more fried foods, no more chocolate bars?
No French fries. No.
You miss it?
Yeah.
Now and then?
Yeah. Now and then. We haven't had spaghetti. We had a pizza finally last week.
Made me sick.
Last
I'm
week
not used to
we
it.
had a pizza. That's the first pizza I've had since 2006. So.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yep.
a long time without
Yep.
a pizza.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, 2000.
No, you had pizza when you were at Stanford.
Stanford,
in
yeah.
November.
So since last year.
So you've been towing the line pretty...
So that was January or December when we came home that we started this.
Yeah. I just took everything out of the house, donated it, whatever I could.
Now, would you have considered any of these lifestyle changes before the cancer? If
Probably
someone
not.
came
Probably
to you?
Probably not.
But I love to eat.
Oh, and he does.
don't lock yourself away. Don't retreat from society or your friends. And above all, don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. There's been numerous times I was unable to do certain things, and I had to ask someone to come to my home and help with certain chores, or help take me to an appointment or something. And that's extremely important. If you don't, you end up locking yourself away and become a hermit, wherever, in your own home or wherever you live, and it's not good. Your mind does strange things then, and you think bad thoughts. And you need to be very positive in order to beat this disease. And I plan on beating it.
Good.
If the doctor said to me, Frank, we're going to have to take one of your fingers off, I'd say, which hand? I'm here to be cured, or at least put into remission. They have a tendency to not use the word cured with cancer when they're treating you. They use the word remission, because they really don't know if you're cured until at least 5 years go by without a repeat of cancer, or if you happen to die of something else along the way, then they know they cured you of the cancer because you died of a heart attack, or you died of bad spleen or whatever. So you never really know if you're cured for quite some time. That specter or ghost is always behind that closet door. So you try to live your life as much as you can to the fullest and not worry about it, because the Bible says you do not live a day longer by worrying. And I believe it. I try not to worry. I try not to make my family worry by keeping my spirits high and being busy.
So even though you're retired, you keep busy?
I'm busier now than I was when I was working. I don't know how I found time to work. And my honey-do list never shrinks.
As you can see, the climb hasn't gotten any easier, but we're certainly stronger for it. And we can take courage because we're nearly at the top. Which brings us to question number 6. How has it changed your life? Is there anything that has changed in your life that's actually been for the better?
Oh, I think it makes you realize, get your priorities in order, make you appreciate the loved ones that you have, and the time that you have left on this earth is more important to you, because you realize there is a limit. When you're younger, you'd think there's no, that's way off in the future, it'll never happen to me, but it makes you aware that you are going to die. It may not be in 5 years, it may not be in 10, but that's coming, and it just makes you want to be kinder to the people in your life and show them love more. With me, I'm very grateful. I wake up every day and I thank God for all my many, many blessings, not just being a cancer survivor, but all my family and my loved ones and the things that He has pulled us through. And I think gratitude and attitude is pretty much it.
That's well said.
Terry, what about you? Do you think there's been any benefits? Are you any closer now?
In some respects, yes. I think we've been able to discuss issues and concerns that we may have as a family or with each other with a little more frankness and openness, and not, flinching or ducking or being silent. Hers was, for me, was a real checkpoint. I mean, in life, if you would. It's rather sobering, and to think that you might lose your spouse. We're fairly young, relatively, by today's standards. And I think it's just a wake-up call to make sure that you've got your own priorities in order. If you haven't paid attention to all your family members, maybe it's time to spend a little extra time with them and tell them you love them, and if you mean it, and
don't tell them anything.
And not play the oh poor me card. I think I respect that in Mickey. she never played that card with me or with family, and that's important, I think. I mean, that's a real sign of strength.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just a checkpoint in life to you kind of test yourself and test your feelings and test your thinking and look at the other person and say, hey, I love you, babe.
Do you find that your life has changed in some ways for the better?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
How?
We're closer most of the time.
Yeah.
Why? Why do you think that is?
Because of the uncertainty of things now. You know, you didn't worry about it before. Now I don't worry about it, but it's there. You know.
Yeah.
And we try to do more things together and that kind of stuff. We went to the movies yesterday.
And he slept through the movie, but that's okay.
Obviously, it's changed your life. How has it changed your life?
Oh, immensely. Has changed my life. I had retired, semi-retired, a few years back, and left one career. And my hobby has always been woodworking. And I was fortunate enough to have a friend who owns a cabinet shop and was able to go to work for him. So I was doing something that I loved, I was passionate about, and really enjoyed. When I was diagnosed, and I was unable to work anymore, and that was very difficult to not be able to provide for my family, even though my boys are grown and gone. It's just my wife and I, but still it was difficult to have to stay home and not be able to go out and work and, like I said, provide for my family as I'd always done. But and it was just, as I said, very difficult because you're so limited as to what you can do when you first start your chemotherapy, or even the radiation therapy also. It affects you so drastically that your everyday life is no longer your everyday life. It's you never know how you're going to feel that next day or whatever. And, it makes it difficult to plan things, to do anything like that.
So it's one step at a time?
Literally, it is one step, one day at a time.
I thought I was a Christian before this. I didn't even know what a Christian was before this. I thought I was a good Christian. I believed in God, and on occasion I went to church and I gave at the church. But it wasn't really the Christianity that I now know that this cancer has made me pursue and find. So if nothing good came out of this, it was that I became a better Christian. And by me becoming a better Christian and setting an example for my family, both the children and my wife, we have all benefited by it in our Christian life. That's the good news. And every cloud's got a silver lining, the cliche says. And in my case, if I had to point at the silver lining, it's that I'm a better Christian now, and I know what a Christian is.
Well, I did make it to the top. I left my cameraman behind to get the shots. And unfortunately, by the time I got to the very top, they couldn't see me. There were a lot of lessons in that. And in fact, as I got near the top, it was volcanic rock. And there was only one way I could climb, and that was on my knees. And I guess there are a lot of lessons in that, too. In closing, let's finish with number 7. Let's ask our tour guides what they would say to someone who had just been diagnosed with cancer.
You have to start affirming and saying to yourself, I know I can beat this. I believe I can. I know I can. I believe it, and I will. And let a lot of humor into your life. That's another thing that the more you can laugh, the more you're going to increase that positive energy. And share it. Share it with people. I believe that sharing your diagnosis and your prognosis and your treatment details are important. It takes a burden off you. Your friends want to help, so they want to know. How many times have you heard about people who, oh, they've got cancer, What kind? I don't know. And you worry and you worry and you care about your friends. So anyway, your friends want to help. So I would suggest telling them all the details and then asking them to pray for you and bring a casserole now and then.
Did you get lots of free meals?
I'll second that.
We did. We belong to a church in Cohasset where we live, and we have a group of women, primarily, of course, that every time someone who's a member of our church is ill or kind of down and out, they bring meals. They take turns, and then they'll bring a huge meal like every other day. And just friends do that for each other, you know, and it's a wonderful thing.
Keep a positive attitude.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think that's what got me through it was, well, I can't do much about it, so let's enjoy it, you know. And what there is to enjoy, you know. I just had a good time. I teased the nurses. I got out and I walked in the hospital when I could, you know. Couldn't do much of that. I mean, but initially, but as I got stronger and stronger, I'd get out and I'd walk and walk, you know. Well, you're in for the second round of chemo. I had to go into the hospital each time to get it. And I'd get out and I'd walk 7 miles while I was in there for 3 days, you know, in the hospital, just around and around and around on the floor.
Wow, they could have charged you road tax.
Yeah, they could have.
Yep. And what would you tell spouses that are having to care for people with cancer?
That Western medicine isn't always the answer, that you need to do research on the internet. You got to keep the person strong. They don't do that in the hospitals. You know, they didn't manage his diabetes like they should have, which put him even farther, you know, behind the power curve. You've got to stay alkaline. If you don't stay alkaline, you're going to die. I mean, anybody will. If you have an acidic body, something's going to happen. Because we all have cancer cells in us. It's if they develop or not. Of course, he had a lot of help with Agent Orange, but I think now that we've got him alkaline and eating decently, he has a chance. You know, it may come back, it may not. Nobody knows. You know, but you just gotta hang in there.
I don't think that all the people that prayed for me, I think that it helped immensely
yes.
too. You know,
Yes.
I believe that helped a lot.
Yep.
God answers our prayers. Yeah.
Don't lose hope. Don't just remember that every day we're coming up with new things, new treatments and everything. And just since I've been diagnosed, there's been 2 major advances that I'm aware of for my type of cancer specifically. And I'm like I said, I'm going to be here for a long time. And one of the ways of doing now is that it's kind of experimental. I don't know all the particulars on it, but they're going to try some new stuff on me real soon here. And, the other one was right after I was diagnosed. One of the drugs that came out, it was target specific to my type of tumor. It had just been approved, and I was fortunate enough to start out with that, and I think that helped me immensely to get through the first 6 or 8 months. So.
It says in the Bible that God worries about the sparrow, and certainly he'll worry more about his children. That's us. And so we shouldn't worry. God will take care of us. And I believe firmly that he is taking care of me, and he will take care of anybody with enough faith in God. And that's why James 1:12 is such a comfort to me. And when you look at James 1:12, it's only one sentence. It says it all. It says, perseverance will get God's attention during days of trial. And I don't look at it as a why me. I look at it as a challenge. God wants to know if I'm going to blame him for my problems. I'm not going to blame him. I'm going to go to him, but I'm not going to blame him. And our preacher tells us all prayers are answered. Sometimes you don't like the answer, but they're heard and they're answered. In my case, I've been thrilled with the answers because he's kept me alive and kept me going.
you for joining me on our climb today up Mount Shasta. In closing, I'd like to say, remember that no matter how great the view from the top of the mountain, heaven has a better one. Until next time. In the year 2008, in the United States alone, over 1,437,000 people will be diagnosed with cancer. You, one of your family members or a friend, may be one of them. If so, you could find yourself visiting a cancer center like the one behind me. Terrifying at its best, a diagnosis of cancer is definitely a life-changing experience. But come with me now through the lives of other people that have been diagnosed with cancer and have found their courage, strength, and support in a variety of means. There are some stories that just have to be told. Wings of Eagles is one such story. It was a cold autumn day in the year 2008 when I first sat down in my office to read the story of Georgia Alvarez and her son Joseph. She said, "I will never forget this as long as I live, even though I wish I could." We sat down side by side, Alberta and I, facing the intern, holding hands. She started off with the words, "I'm sorry, but..." That's all I needed to hear. Tears started rolling down my face and they didn't stop for 3 days. She went on to tell us that there was no mistake, that Joseph had leukemia. Well, I cried, and I cried. I kept telling her over and over, "Not Joseph. Please, not Joseph. It could be anyone else in the world, but not Joseph." I just kept crying out to her, not hearing her words. I stopped holding Alberta's hand and just hung my face, looking at my lap. We ended our talk and I followed the doctor out of the room. Walking faster and faster down the hall toward the elevator, my husband passed me. Riding down the elevator, I don't even remember looking up. I remember looking at my shoes. As soon as those elevator doors opened, my husband dashed out and almost ran to the doors that led out of the hospital. With blurred vision, I caught up to him and put my hand on his shoulder and witnessed something I had never seen before in all the years of our marriage. My husband, this big, strapping man who I thought was invincible, was crying. I started comforting him, forgetting my own heartache. But the agony and despair in my husband's face told the story of how he felt. He felt punished. He felt burdened. He felt betrayed. Almost 2 decades later, Georgia Alvarez will now tell you the story of her son Joseph and the foundation that began in honor of his name and his memory. Wings of Eagles.
There was something about Joseph that people just were drawn to. It was really odd because I could be walking with the kids and people, it was like young children and the elderly, it seemed like, were really drawn to Joseph. And people would walk like across the street just to come and look at him or touch him and say, oh, he was such a, I saw him from across the street, he's such a cute little boy, I just had to come over and look at him and talk to him. I mean, and then Joseph was also different in the way that he was a very giving and compassionate child from a very young age. He was very giving and compassionate. One time my sister came to town and she wanted to take the kids out Christmas shopping, and I couldn't go with them because I was at work, so I gave Joseph $5 and Mary $5 and my niece and my nephew each $5 so that they could go Christmas shopping. And this was in the middle 80s, so of course, you know, times had changed. $5 was a lot of money for a little kid. And I remember my sister coming back from town and me asking what the kids get, and she said, well, Joseph didn't get anything because they were going into a store and there was a homeless man on the street, and Joseph had given him his $5 that he was to go shopping with because he said that the homeless man needed it more than he did. So, I mean, that was just the type of person Joseph was. When there was anybody that was injured, he would always go find help or find relief, and I don't know, he just was a good person. Right after he turned 8 years old, Joseph started having headaches, and he started losing his appetite, and he wasn't sleeping all that well. And this was unusual for him. Not saying that he was always extremely healthy, because he had his health problems, but because he had asthma when he was growing up. But this was out of character for him, because Joseph was like one of those kids. They'd get up at 5 a.m., run, think, work all day, play all day, and go to bed at like 8:30. I mean, he just never ran out of energy. And he was a big eater because he was a husky boy and very stocky. And so he just never ran out of energy. But over the 6 months when he started complaining about headaches, and then he'd get these oddball fevers during the day. You know, he'd spike a fever, 102.1, and then by evening it was gone. You know, it was just things like that. So I started taking him to his pediatrician about once a month. Saying, you know, there's something wrong, you know, but it was none of these, really anything specific that I could put my finger on. So the doctor said, he goes, well, I don't really know what's wrong with him. He goes, but let's take a blood test just to make sure that it's nothing serious. So told me to bring back the next morning early because Joseph was supposed to fast. He wasn't supposed to eat anything before the blood test. So I believe I took him to the lab at the Mangrove Medical Group at about 8 a.m. in the morning. I was saying, gosh, I hope he doesn't have something like mono. And I got to thinking about, or maybe diabetes, you know. Alberto Jr. called from the house going, Georgia, the doctor's on the phone. So it was 6:20 at night. And so even though this was the summer, it was still really nice outside. It was just like, whoa, doctors don't call you. You know, they don't call you at night. You know, so I went running down the hill and I grabbed the phone, and Dr. Johnson said, well, Joseph's urine test came out clean, but his blood test, he looks like he has leukemia. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, leukemia. And I had only actually heard of a couple other people in my life, 2 or 3 other people in my life, having leukemia, didn't exactly know what it was, knew it was related to cancer, sounded serious. So I told Dr. Johnson, can you hold on for a second? And I yelled down the hall to my husband, Alberto. I said, Alberto, pick up the extension. The doctor wants to tell you something. And then I got back on the phone with the doctor and I said, could you repeat to my husband what you just told me? And he told my husband, it looks like Joseph has leukemia.
For a little over 17 months, the Alvarez family fought bravely on through the horrors of chemotherapy, radiation, and an excruciating bone marrow transplant. But sadly, the battle ended on July the 28th, 1991. Joseph died in his own home, on his mother's pillow, with both parents by his side. Joseph's life ended, but his inspiration lives on.
Between the time that Joseph relapsed, in fact, it happened immediately on our ride home from UC Davis, that day that they said that Joseph had 0 chance for survival. It even said it on, I have it on a document, that Joseph has 0% chance of survival. You ever see that about one of your kids? It was horrid. I mean, documentation. Well, during our stays at the different hospital, we realized, because we were getting a huge amount of financial and emotional support from friends, families, people that we didn't even know that helped our family financially and emotionally through this situation, our crisis situation. I mean, Joseph didn't go without anything. All of our bills were always paid. You have to remember, we had 2 households, one in Chico and one for 4 months in Palo Alto. And all of that was paid by the generosity of people that just cared about us. But that wasn't what we saw, which was normal to other people who were in the same situation that we were in. So after Joseph died, and then I had Angela, and I got my strength back, my husband and I got our strength back, we decided that we were going to help other people in Joseph's memory the same way that we were helped, and that we were going to call it Wings of Eagles, the Joseph Alvarez Organization for Seriously Ill Children. And we founded Wings of Eagles in June of 1993, really not knowing what we were doing, but we knew that we wanted to help families that were in this terrible crisis that we had been in. We were a middle-income family. We did not, we applied for services, but we did not qualify for any services. So we were stuck in between that rock and the hard place. We weren't low income, so we didn't get any services, but we weren't rich enough to pay for everything. It was because of the generosity of our friends, family, and community that we were able to survive that financial storm that we went through. So that's what we based our thoughts of what we wanted Wings of Eagles to be that safety net for families that had no other resource like we had. And so we started Wings of Eagles, the Joseph Alvarez Organization, in June of 93. Our first fundraiser was October of 93. We put on a Mexican dinner. We raised $1,800 for our first fundraiser. We were ecstatic, and we helped one family that year. We helped them save their house, and we gave them a really great Christmas because they fell behind on their mortgage payments, and they were about to lose their home. And we were able to pay their mortgage and also give them gift certificates to the Chico Mall so that they could do a really nice Christmas for their family. Well, the second year, we raised $5,000. Wings of Eagles raised $5,000, and we helped 5 families that year. The third year, we raised $15,000, and we helped more families. So since that time, since 1993, Wings of Eagles has raised well over $3 million and helped over 1,000 families.
Wow.
That have children with cancer, and not only cancer, but children with other serious life-threatening illnesses. And it was all because of one little boy. He was special. I learned so much from him. I was not the same person after Joseph passed away because I had learned so much from him. I had learned that there was more important things in life than material things. Your most important things in your life are your children and your family, things that are so irreplaceable that you do not even realize that until it happens. We're here for a reason. The reasoning isn't just for our own selfish needs. The reason is to help others. I went through a tragic time in my life to learn that lesson, but we're here to help others. You know, you're supposed to be giving and loving. You know, but Jesus.
Well, if you've enjoyed this story as much as I have, and you'd like to help Wings of Eagles, contact them via their website at www.wingsofeagles.org. Stay tuned for our next cancer story. Well, here we are at Butte Creek Country Club in Chico, California, second home of Debbie Maduris, championship golfer and cancer survivor. I met here with Debbie, her sister Lynn, and her mother, all cancer survivors. Today, Debbie is hosting a tournament called Swing for a Cure for the early detection and prevention of cancer. Come with me today and meet the whole family as we discuss cancer and the way in which they as a family dealt with it and won as a team. So let's go tee off now. Okay, so we've got you, we've got your husband, we've got one of your sisters, your youngest sister, we've got your mom,
yeah,
we've got your grandmother.
Yes.
And I mean, there's not that many more that we could really.
No, and actually, if we go back in time, my dad's sister, so my aunt, had lymphoma 20-something years ago.
Wow.
And she lived in Fresno, and she went through chemo, and she did pass away due to it, I think. But it's just like we didn't know much about it then, but now we're kind of experts going through this whole process. And radiation is a daily treatment, usually for like 6 weeks for a lot of people.
Now, when you went through that, did you lose your hair and go through the whole scenario?
Yeah, so I had my surgery December 20th. 3 weeks later, I started chemo. And Dr. Keats said, you know, there's a fair chance you'll lose your hair. Don't cut it off now, but about the 2 to 3 week mark, you know. So then you start shedding, you know, and it doesn't.
Now, how does that feel? I mean, I see these movies in the, you know, that's all I've seen. I don't have an experience like you do, and they're in the shower, and the
and it
hair
starts
is,
to fall out.
I mean, emotionally, how do you?
You know, I have to say, of all the stuff I've been through, the hair was just like a non-issue to me.
Right.
I knew it was possible, so it started shedding. And my friend Jane, who you just met, called me when I was diagnosed, and she's a real upbeat, you know, grab it and run with it type of person. So when she went through it, she said, Debbie, she goes, I'm driving down the Esplanade one day, and I go to run my hand through my hair, and a whole clump comes out. because she went through chemo too. She goes, I rolled down the window and threw it out, and there was a car going next to me, and the person was just like, ah! So when mine started to come out, I dealt with that for a couple of days, and I thought, that's enough of that. So we go out in the backyard, and we had an electric razor thing, and I had my husband shave my head. I didn't have a mirror out there or anything, and my hair looked pretty much like this. So he shaves it, and I'm bending over, and he looks down, and he goes, oh, looks like a squirrel died or something on the ground here. I said, I know, but how do I look? And he goes, I think you look younger.
Bless his heart.
What a nice thing to say.
That was very nice.
And when I first came back out to play golf here, I play on Saturday mornings with 3 girlfriends. And I show up with my baseball cap on and no hair. And they had all gone and gotten baseball caps. And they wore them. And I have a picture of us, too. We're all there with our carts. They've got their hats on. They never wear baseball caps. And I was just blown away. I mean, it was just that kind of little thing that helps you. You know, like some kids will say, well, I'm going to shave my head because my friend lost his hair. They wore baseball caps, and it was cool, and they've never worn them since.
Just prior to this tournament, I met with Debbie, Lynn, her sister, and her mother. And they all sat down and discussed with me their individual experience with cancer. I'd like to share that interview with you now. So here we have almost the whole family, but not quite. So what do we have here? Mom, which is your name?
Mom, Barbara.
Barbara?
Lynn?
Lynn?
Debbie?
Debbie, who's missing?
Carol.
Carol. We'll see Carol later on. We'll cut her into this. So this is a pretty unique family. You have no brothers.
No.
So just 3 sisters and mom. Dad has passed away. Yes. Okay, so out of 4 of you, we have 3 of you that have experienced cancer.
And I've done it twice. I'm an overachiever.
You're an overachiever.
And Mom feels like she's an underachiever and doesn't
I feel like
doesn't
an
feel she
underachiever.
belongs in the category.
In fact, we had to pull you into this, didn't we? Come on, Mom, sit down.
Well, I didn't have to go through everything, just lumpectomy and...
Okay, so, but the first interchange with cancer.
Mom's mother.
Okay, so your mom
At age 88, had a double mastectomy.
at age
No
88.
treatment.
Wow.
So we just felt anyone that gets to 88 is going to have something, and they didn't do any treatment, and she lived almost 92, so the doctor wasn't concerned about her having to have treatment.
No chemo?
No.
Nothing.
And the doctor, she had a very slow, I think, slow-growing cancer,
Yeah.
and the doctor said she's likely not going to die from this, and she didn't actually die from that either. So when people would say, do you have a family history? I said, well, if my grandmother passed away at 87, no, I wouldn't have a family history, but she lived to 88 and she got breast cancer. But it's pretty hard to link that to younger cancers.
Is it genetic? Is this cancer genetic that's gone through your whole
Not the
family?
gene that they can measure right now.
Okay.
We've been genetically tested. Mine was negative. Debbie chose to do it as well, and it was negative, of course. And
It's called the BRCA1 and 2 test, and it tells you also if you have a predisposition, I believe, to ovarian cancer, which
Yes.
is kind of why you want to know if you're positive or not, because some people don't want to know. But if you have a history like this and you decide to check it, our thought was, well, I think we should know, and I think we should know for ourselves, our sister, our nieces, but some people would rather not know.
it's a very personal choice, but again, I think we felt the necessity to, especially when I got it the second time, I got tested. Actually, I got tested before then because of some ovarian issues, and it came back negative. So, but I don't know the statistics, but I believe it's not that many of breast cancer cases where it is a genetic link with the BRCA gene. So really, every woman has to be careful. It's not just those who, because I hear all the time, oh, we don't have any family history. And it's, well, neither did we. And then one day I got diagnosed, you know. We had Grandma, and that was it.
So Grandma was first.
Yes.
And then Lynn, you were next.
I was next.
You were next in line. So how old were you at that time?
I was 42.
42. Any signs, any suspicions?
No, I did a routine breast exam, and honestly, there was a little heavenly intervention for me on this one because I went for mammograms routinely. I just had a physician exam, and I had just had a mammogram. And I was coming out of church one Sunday, the week before Christmas, in 2000 or 1999, no, 2000 I think it was. And I saw a woman coming in. They had moved out of town, and we waved and said hello. And I thought to myself, you know, she's my age and she had breast cancer this year. I really need to do a self-exam. And the first place I touched, I got a lump.
Really?
The first place I touched. And I think one of the things women try to comfort themselves with information that makes them think they don't have breast cancer. I had a round lump that was painful. It was movable. Those are
So
usually,
as soon as you touched,
I knew it was about this size. It was very small. But I had all the signs of benign breast disease, not a cancerous tumor. But I went in and I made an appointment the next day. I went in, we watched it for a couple weeks, and I had a biopsy, and the doctor called me back, and my husband was out of town. He was out back east on a business trip, and the doctor didn't want to tell me, but he was going on vacation. I said, you have to tell me. I said, you've met me enough times. I'm not going to fall apart if you tell me this. And so he told me over the phone. It came back and it was positive, and he was stunned.
he wasn't expecting that.
No, he wasn't expecting that. You don't want to hear you have cancer, but okay, you've heard it, so let's get real. That's realistic. What you don't want to then hear is that you have to have a double mastectomy and chemotherapy. Well, I had the double mastectomy, but didn't know about the chemotherapy. Yes, okay, I can deal with the double mastectomy. Then it's the chemo, and it's like, well, you know what? As long as I'm living at the end of this, the chemo doesn't bother me, and losing my hair doesn't bother me. I had a hysterectomy too because of the aggressive nature of my cancer, and the drug they wanted to put me on required me to clearly not have working ovaries. In the end, those were probably all the things a woman worries about.
Right.
Losing her breasts, losing her female organs, and going bald.
You
But
faced all of them, and
Yeah.
you know, here we are.
It starts to be a step. I mean, you hear you have it, and you think, now that I've been through this with my husband and myself, and almost my husband again, it's like, okay, just let me have something I can deal with. And then you start to bargain in your mind, like, if you've never been through this, you think, oh my God, cancer, it's just a terrible thing. Well, yeah, it's not so great. But you start to realign your thinking, and you go, okay, just give me something I can deal with. And then tell me what it is I have to do, and I will do it. So in my case, it was like, okay, am I going to have a lumpectomy? Because when you first hear it, you don't know any of this.
Right.
You know, is it in my lymph nodes? You don't know that till surgery and a week later. So they do the surgery, they close you up. If they test your lymph nodes and it was positive, you go back. Okay. So I remember the day that I heard it wasn't in there. I mean, it was just, okay, that's great. Okay, I've had a double mastectomy, fine. I'm going to go through chemo. I'm going to lose my hair. And the hair thing, I think Lynn will agree, to the women out there that are worried about it, it was no big deal.
It was beyond no big deal, and Debbie's hair was short. Debbie's hair was shorter than mine is now when she lost it. Mine was down to here. And I would say it was the single most liberating, and it was brown, mind you.
And it wasn't naturally brown.
I took a lot of work.
And I remember going back to Guatemala the first time out, because we were involved in this program in Guatemala that we co-founded for education, and we went back to the post office, and the gentleman recognized my husband, and he looked at me, and I said in Spanish, well, I look a little different. I had chemotherapy last year, and I lost all my hair. So he looked at me, and he winked, and he goes, oh, so that's the real color. And so I found it to be I mean, all of it, because again, those are the things women worry about the most, and none of them makes a difference, because my contribution to the world, or my sense of femininity, has absolutely nothing to do with any one of those items, or all of them combined, too. Yeah. My husband doesn't love me less, and I'm really lucky. My husband doesn't love me less, he loves me more. I love him more because I saw him come into this in a way that, you know, and I shared that moment with you, the thing I missed the most about chemo. I called them my spa days, because it was the only time I got to sit down. I got put in a recliner, they put warm blankets on me, my husband would go out and get me like a frappuccino, and they'd give me something that made me sleepy, and then I call it the soundtrack of your experience. On my iPod, I put together just music with no words, just instrumentals of things that were very calming to me. And every week I plugged that in. I fell asleep to it, I woke up to it. And when I would wake up to my husband sitting about 6 feet away from me, just quietly reading. And to me that exemplified his support of me. So I used to laugh with the nurses, and I said, let me get this straight, because the first drugs I had, they had to wear protective clothing. and they were real tough drugs. And I said, let me get this straight, because I had a port in my chest. You have to put on protective clothing, and you're going to stick it right into my bloodstream. And I laugh. But you know, what it did also is what you have to be good in that profession is you have to be our Sister Carol, who is a dialysis nurse and who deals with patients on that same level of care with patients who are often
Very
equally
sick.
as sick.
Yeah.
And that's where we relied on her, because I would say to the nurses, I said, boy, do I appreciate my sister and what she does for her
Yeah, because
patients.
I mean, is she feeling left out of all of this? I mean, does
Well,
she
this is
almost?
what
I mean, if
said
you're
that- but does she worry about it? I don't know. Does she ever say anything to you? I mean, she can't.
Well,
help
we
but
interviewed
think.
her, and she said she doesn't worry about
I
it.
don't-
And right now we'll cut away to exactly what she did say during our interview and see.
My name is Carol Elwood.
And you're the sister of, what are your sisters?
Debbie Medeiros and Lynn Waspy.
Okay, now, this story, of course, is about cancer, but you yourself don't have cancer, but you've been tested for it, is that correct?
Yes, I've had various tests. They thought at one point I had uterine cancer, and I did have a complete hysterectomy. Turned out to be okay.
Wow.
And I've had several breast biopsies.
Oh, so do you feel like it's kind of like Russian roulette with all this cancer in the family? And
A little bit. I mean, I'm at this point the only female, because my mother and grandmother both have had breast cancer, and my two sisters. So my odds are not as good as it could be, but there's not a whole lot you can do about it other than to be vigilant with your testing.
So your annual tests? Right.
Yes, at least.
Can I ask a question? Let's have the rubber really hit the road now. If you could live your life having not gone through the last couple of years, and this is very difficult because how could you have?
Yeah.
But hypothetically, would you have traded the experience? And I ask this, Lynn, because it almost sounded to me through your emails, through the email that you sent me and our conversations on the telephone, that this has almost enriched your life.
I would absolutely positively not have missed this for anything at this point. The first time out opened my mind a certain way. After that point, my husband and I started again going, we went down to Guatemala, and we found a kind of a calling to work with indigenous children down there to provide them an education. And interestingly, how that plays out in the second round of cancer. In the second round of cancer, the first thought I had was, if I'm gone, who's going to do this? Who's going to do this for these kids? Like any mother would. I don't have my own children, but like any mother would. And so that gave me motivation. But that was a product of kind of the outcome of the first cancer. I would not know. I'm a different person, and in probably all the best ways, and in many ways it's been the most liberating experience of my life, and I think will continue to define. The biggest challenge is to continue to keep that sense of liberation, that sense of
so you don't get back into the same old
transformation.
plodding through life and just, so
Getting
caught
worried about
up
the small stuff, and no, I mean, again, it's addressing there are many other things in my life to be afraid of, I suppose, but I fear them less because I've addressed the things that probably I was most afraid of. And in your life, that as I realized how much time was spent on things that didn't add to the quality of my life. They were filler, and
have they gone by the wayside?
Either they've gone by the wayside or the way I look at them is different.
I think that's what your perspective changes.
So it seems to me what I'm hearing as a summary on all of this is that you have learned how to take it one step at a time and to conquer that mountain as you climb it.
Yeah.
But don't anticipate a mountain that's not there.
Right.
And leave yourself open to the fact that there can be really great lessons, great joy. And I think pretty much everyone who goes through difficult things finds that there's some silver lining. And I think I entered into mine just knowing there is a silver lining, And the excitement is, what is it? Where am I going to find it? And so for me, the second time around was very much a different one, even though it was a much more serious experience than the first time around.
I came across that little card I kept for you while you're going through your and I don't know why I drew it as a hill, and treatment 1, 2, 3, and you get to the top.
And you have to say that every week for the 16 treatments, I would come home and there would be a rose representing that week's treatment, and it started with one rose for the first treatment, and then it had the one little notch up the hill. Then the second week,
Mom did this?
yes,
Mom did this?
she'd come down while I was at treatment. The second week it was 2 roses, and it was up the second notch. She used the same card every week, and the new one. And I came home and the last one was 16 roses, and it's like,
it's over.
Yeah. It was really, really a great way to measure it. In the last 30 days, my husband bought me a laminated, empty 30-day calendar because he knows I like to count them off. And I draw in the pictures like I drew in when my last eyelash flew out. And I drew in when we went to tea to celebrate, because we celebrated, ooh, yippee, we're going to go for tea because I'm having a mastectomy. And then we did it because I'm going to start chemo. And, ooh, I lost my hair, let's go for tea. And we finally celebrated my 50th birthday by going for tea.
I hope that the experience of these wonderful, beautiful people have been as uplifting to you as they have been to me. And remember, we win as a team.
Debbie, it's your big day?
It is. It's here.
Attendance is fantastic.
Huge.
Sold out?
Sold out.
Sold out. Wow. Well, we'll be following you on the course as you swing for a cure.
Please stay with us as Cancer Stories continues. The diagnosis of cancer can, for many people, mean nothing less than a death sentence. And it's true, for some, it may be the time in life to begin preparing for those final days. And yet for others, it can in fact be good news. Now, I know that sounds ironic, but I say that from my own experience because, you see, I too have had my own abnormal test results. And for me, it was a real wake-up call. I had to stop and think about those things that were the most important to me in life. And that's always good news. It can also begin a series of events that can change your entire life for the better. And that's the purpose of our series of cancer stories. So today, come with me and meet a most amazing woman who is in fact also my mother-in-law. Her name is Kay Myers Carson. So let's go and meet her now. Let's begin our story by placing it within the context of Kay's entire life. Born in South Carolina in the year 1925, Kay entered the world in an era of unprecedented change. The 1920s were dubbed the Roaring Twenties by a society that were truly living the American dream. A time of national prosperity and invention marked the opening years of Kay's life. Women were now national voters and considered equal in the workforce. Television and radio were in their infancy and impacting the lives of millions of individuals throughout the country. But in the last few months of 1929, when Kay was a mere 4 years old, everything changed. The stock market, which had been riding high for years, suddenly collapsed, leaving America in a state of unprepared shock. The Great Depression which followed left millions of men, women and children homeless and hungry, living in makeshift shanties and attending the long lines of charity soup kitchens. The deplorable state of national bankruptcy continued throughout the 1930s into the mid-1940s. This was the backdrop for Kay's formation years. And just when it seemed the world could get no darker, America was introduced into the horrors of World War II via the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Kay, now aged 16, continued to attend high school preparatory to her college years. But again, life took another unexpected turn, and at the tender age of 18, Kay entered a whirlwind romance with a dashing Navy lieutenant by the name of Dick Myers, who somehow managed to uncharacteristically sweep the level-headed teenager off her feet. The two were married in the midst of those war-torn years, interrupting Kay's educational pursuits and leaving her at home alone, while Lieutenant Myers shipped out to face the horrors of war yet again. So let's head on up to Kay's now, but along the way I'd like to continue the story. After the war, Kay and her husband Dick resumed their life and later on had two small boys, Richard and Larry. But Kay also wanted to pursue her education, which she had to put on pause during the war. And so she attended Winthrop University and gained a Bachelor of Arts degree with an English major. But even that wasn't enough for the ambitious and intelligent young Kay. She then went on to the University of San Francisco and gained a Bachelor of Science degree in Human Relations and Organizational Management. Really something, isn't it? But in the midst of her very busy and productive life, in the year 1962, tragedy struck. Her husband and childhood sweetheart, Dick Myers, was struck down in his prime at the age of 37, dying of an unexpected heart attack, leaving Kay's well-organized world and heart in a shambles. But true to form, she battled on, raising her sons and working until she finally remarried Joe Carson, a graduate of the University of California, Berkeley, a successful engineer in the year 1968. Life was full and happy during this time of adventure and world travel until Kay began to experience unusual headaches, which continued to increase in intensity over a period of some 7 years, during which the doctors and specialists tried to convince the now middle-aged woman that the illness was, in fact, all in her mind. But Kay knew better. Now on the verge of collapse, she was finally diagnosed with a life-threatening pneumonia, or brain tumor. But if that wasn't enough, the operation left Kay with Bell's palsy, resulting in the entire collapse of the left side of her beautiful and lively face. To this day, Kay has no use of the left side of her mouth and is also permanently deaf in her left ear. But Kay, being the determined fighter that she is, pushed herself through rehabilitation and continued to give her life in service to her fellow human beings. At this time, in her late 70s, she left Napa and moved to Paradise, California to be closer to her family, where she continued her volunteer work on the Paradise Symphony Society board. And at the age of 80, she put on a uniform and functioned as a volunteer in the Paradise, California Police Service. In 2007, Kay's still active and fruitful life hit yet another brick wall. She began feeling less than her normal jubilant self and was at last diagnosed with AML, acute myelogenous leukemia. Now, in her own words, Kay will share with you the story of the most difficult battle of her life, cancer. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience with cancer?
Yes, toward the beginning of 2007, I didn't feel as well as I normally did, but I had not the least idea why. On a Monday night in 2007, I went to our local emergency room and was diagnosed with cellulitis and sent home with an antibiotic. The following night, I returned to the emergency room only to be diagnosed with acute myelogenous leukemia. What a surprise. I was transferred to the University of California in San Francisco after a couple of days at Feather River Hospital. And what a story. There, the chemo was administered after the prognosis that there was a 50% chance that I couldn't survive the chemo. I did that, and then all of my vital systems started to fail, my heart, my lungs, my gallbladder. And again, the prognosis was extremely poor. I was not expected to live. But here I am in August of 2008, a real testimony to the glory, the power, and the grace of God.
Amen. I know you certainly surprised the doctors through all of this. I talked with Dr. Marsh from Feather River Hospital, and this is what he had to say.
So has she surprised you?
Well, certainly she did. First of all, the treatment that she got at UCSF was very aggressive. Although she had some setbacks and complications, she survived through it. That is usually not very common, is unheard of, the way that she went through all the complications.
So, tell us a little bit about your furry friend there.
This is my little love, Benny, which is French for blessing. There are many moments when I look for the antonym to that word, but she really is a joy.
What are some of the lessons that you've learned through all of this?
Well, I've learned that there's more than one way to spell patient. One is P-A-T-I-E-N-T, which I've been for some time now, and the other is P-A-T-I-E-N-C-E. I've never been long on patients because I always have a lot of places to go and a lot of things to do, but I'm slowly learning that patience is a necessary part of one's life.
I know what you mean. I have the same problem. But I hope I don't have to go through everything that you've gone through to learn my lessons. Tell me some of the things that you found helpful.
Well, the Lord, of course, has blessed me with a much longer lifespan than I had anticipated a year ago. I'm blessed with many, many friends who have prayed. I've been lifted in prayer many, many times. And obviously the Lord has answered those prayers.
I'd like to add to that. As your family, we were told on several occasions that you only had a matter of days to live, and in some cases, only hours. And yet, here you still are. Anyway, please continue.
After my diagnosis with acute myelogenous leukemia, I was transferred from Feather River Hospital in Paradise, where I live, to the University of California, San Francisco Hospital, and was there for almost 3 months. Following that, I was transferred to St. Mary's for acute rehab. Coincidentally, my first son was born at St. Mary's, where they no longer have an OB/GYN unit.
At this rate, you'll probably outlive your son. But tell us a little bit about the treatment that you received while you were in those hospitals.
Well, I cannot say enough good things about the staff at UCSF nor at St. Mary's. They were all wonderful. And when I started participating in the clinical trial at Stanford, I found the research team there to be very cooperative. I have to fly from my home at about departing about 9 o'clock in the morning, and we return home by 5 in the evening. So it's a long day at Stanford, and the staff there are very cooperative in adjusting their schedule to fit mine because they know I have a flight down and a flight back home.
Let's talk about those flights. Angel Flight, what a wonderful service. In fact, I think we'll even take a break here and go and have a look at the last Angel Flight that you had and meet the pilot and your son Richard.
Well, this is our Angel Flight. We're on our way to Stanford like we usually do on Fridays. It's a real blessing to have a pilot fly us down. It would be impossible to drive. So it's one of many blessings for Mom.
And the pilots, I'm not sure how many there are. There's probably 300 in California volunteer their time and their treasures and their aircraft, if that isn't one of their treasures, you know, to accomplish the task.
Wow, and it's all volunteer?
All volunteer.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing it?
I'm just closing out my second year, and I've on about my 70th mission.
Wow.
Yeah, I've done 31 so far this year.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah, I do about one a week.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
With Angel Flight, pilots donate their time, their aircraft and their fuel so that mission recipients can focus on their condition and families without even having to worry about how to pay for the flight. For more information, see their website at www.angelflight.org. So tell me a little bit about your local hospital, Feather River Hospital.
Because I need someone locally to monitor me while I'm taking the trial drug, I also am lucky to have the Feather River Cancer Center and the staff there, Dr. Maj, who is my physician, and Lori, who is his assistant, as well as everyone else. They're always very cheerful and very cooperative.
That is so true. They've been wonderful, especially Dr. Maj, who took a break from his very busy schedule to have an interview with me. And while we're meeting him, let's also meet the charge nurse that took care of you the last day that you had in the hospital, when you in fact had double pneumonia, and again, we thought you only had a matter of hours to live.
I'm a nurse on the surgical unit, and Kay came out from ICU after being there for about, I think, 3 weeks, and she spent another 3 weeks out with us, maybe even 4. It was a good thing she came out from ICU because she was getting better, but she was still so medically fragile. I mean, we all felt like we walked on a tightrope with her. Anything could change at any minute. But the thing with Kay, you only had to look at her and know she was a fighter. You know, and when we get patients like that, I've been a nurse for a long time, but when we get patients like that, you know, you want to fight for them and with them. And that was how we all felt about Kay. You know, she was pale, she had tubes everywhere, she looked sick, really, really sick, but you only had to look in her eyes and you could see, you know, she still had things to do, she still had stuff to say, people to see, and she was going to fight. And we did that with her, and when I saw her, I was here the day she was discharged in one of her little cute pink gowns, and when I saw her roll down the hallway, I mean, it was like we all just got a little teary, because it was a pretty special thing, and we all admired her. It was a pleasure and an honor to take care of a woman like that, and I think most of us felt that way.
So I met with Kay in about May of 2007. At that time, she came in with severe fatigue, and the blood tests were very in a bad position. At that time, a bone marrow biopsy confirmed the diagnosis of acute myeloid leukemia, which is a deadly disease, especially understanding her age at that time was 82. It's a really deadly and serious condition. and the treatments options are unfortunately very limited for that age. It's a deadly disease, and especially her age made it very difficult. We never thought when I met her in May that she's going to be around for maybe a few months, and that's what the standard has been, and that's what we have seen in patients with that age and that disease, the acute aggressive myeloid leukemia with bad cytogenetics that makes it really resistant to standard treatment. And she pulled it through, and she has been, and the most recent laboratory that I have seen, they all look perfectly good. She had
Still looking great.
They're still looking great. She had a bone marrow biopsy, no evidence of cancer, and that is really amazing. And it's blessing that we see something like this. It's not that we could see these things every other daily basis. This is really uncommon, and she has been great and has taught us a lot of things that we never thought we could learn.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us today. And is there anything that you'd like to say in closing?
I would like to close with a final thank you to the hundreds, perhaps thousands of people all over the world who have prayed for me. Thank you so much.
And I'd like to thank you for joining us here today, and I hope in some way it's been a blessing to you. I think the experience that I've learned the most through all of this with Kay is that you should never give up hope. No matter what the prognosis, just keep fighting. Don't give up. And these stairs here behind me represent that to me, almost like an icon. You see, Kay's bedroom is at the top of those stairs, and she was determined to go to bed every night in her own bed, even though it meant climbing up this long flight of stairs. She could have slept down here. There are 2 more bedrooms down here. But no, that's just not her character. So, sometimes she had to crawl up those stairs. Sometimes she had to come down on her backside. But it was her determined purpose to continue on in life. And that is what these stairs meant to her. So in closing, I'd just like to say to you, don't give up hope. And the Lord bless you as you fight your battle with cancer.